I have hit the record button so others who are not here today can watch. If you don't want to be in the video, just please turn your cameras off. But if it doesn't bother you, do as you wish. But if you have questions, please do turn your cameras on, but you can turn it off at that point. And everyone is muted, so I'll just ask, please unmute yourself if you have any questions. So if I could ask you all to start with finding the chat box, as I'm sure all of you know where it is. And can you type in where in the world you are today? So I will start. So I'm outside of Haugesund, Norway today. We have Jan from Toulouse, France. Mary from San Diego. Eileen, you're also in Norway. Maria's in Portugal. We have Diana in Australia. So I'm really glad this was a sort of suitable time for the Australians this time. We have the US, Maryland, California, Quebec, Middleburg, Virginia, Martha's Vineyard, Mass. So really nice to have all of you here. And thank you for taking time out of your day on this Saturday today to join us. So the purpose of this, I guess, 1 hour with you today for me was to make sure, does anyone have any really burning questions about the course? That's the main reason that I wanted to offer this, because, you know, we're now several weeks into, many of you have already done the course. And but I did want to leave it open-ended, that even if you've never done anything in terms of Feldenkrais, that you're welcome to come. So we do have a few people here who are in that boat. So when you do phrase your questions, can you please consider it those that are, or consider those that are new to this, and, you know, just let's try to make sure they understand what we're talking about. So I will take the first question if that's possible. And if not, I have a few things that I'd like to talk about. Is there anyone who wants to ask? So if your screen is on, I assume you have a question. And if that's not the case, you can just let me know. So I'll ask who I see first. To my left is Anne-Marie from Quebec. Did you have no question? Okay, wonderful. Eileen, did you have a question, since you've done this class quite a while ago and are redoing it, I believe, yes?
Yeah, I didn't have quite of a question. I might make a comment that I find with the Feldenkrais exercises, it's tempting to try to do too much, like it's a workout, instead of that you're trying to feel, what would you say, feel where you are and find the small movements and get the connections there. I sort of go into it thinking, yeah, I've got to really do going hard here, but really it's a sort of less is more type of approach, if that's correct.
No, thank you, because this is one of my biggest difficulties, if you will, and how do I convey this message? So welcome to those who are coming in just now. Some more familiar faces. Hi, Barry. And this idea of not trying to do it as exercise, this is really tricky, because we're sort of mostly, I wouldn't say that everyone is, but for the most part, we're wired to do well, to try harder, to do better. And when we think about movement lessons, or even improving our seat or our biomechanics or what have you, we'll often think about muscles and exercise. So I'm not even saying that this is better, it's just different. So by all means, please do your exercise. That's not at all what I'm suggesting. But what I want to say is that why this is different, we do it so slowly so that it doesn't turn out to be something like exercise. Just gonna mute somebody. Okay, perfect. So basically, the reason is that we're trying to rewire movement pathways and change things within our bodies. So I have a few of you here, including Robin, who are exercise specialists. That is not something that I claim to be. And what we do in Feldenkrais is really to work with the person. It doesn't matter their fitness level, but to help them learn to move better as they are, without any type of conditioning or fitness regime. What is interesting, however, though, in terms of flexibility and strength and capacity, in terms, often it's called strength, you will actually see differences sometimes within one lesson. And then you ask, okay, did I get stronger? Did I exercise? Did I stretch? In fact, all we're doing is actually talking to our nervous systems to be able to move better. So sometimes the wiring is a little bit off, if you will, or cross-connected wires. Whatever it is, what we do is these basic, simple lessons that actually have to do with very much how children or toddlers learn. So if something is lost or it wasn't ever learned properly at that stage, however old you are, you can relearn these basic components of movement. And then, of course, when you go off to do your riding or you're in your car driving or walking, all of a sudden things start to move better. And I think a lot of people mistake this for fitness. So, we talk about skeletal strength a lot in Feldenkrais. We talk about the muscle groups working well together, meaning there's nothing contradicting each other. But this all really has to do with the brain. So when you go to pick something up, of course, your hand moves out to get that, but there's this wiring that's been done that your brain knows what to do with that. And we all have our own habits. We all have it, whether we ride or other sports, we can improve the smaller details by going down to the basics. So I'll talk today a bit about pelvic clock because I believe all of you who have done those lessons. So in pelvic clock, it's not that I'm suggesting that we move the pelvis back and forth and have a lot of movement in the back. So depending on the school of riding you're trained in, you might be told to swing more with the back or to keep your lower back quiet and move with the hip joint. So again, my goal is to not teach anybody how to ride, but what I can say is that you have those options and you do a simple, basic human movement lesson. So pelvic clock, first of all, it will help you soften the back, loosen things up, get the hips moving, and it will also get you out of any type of habits of going into a fetal position or leaning forward or jamming your heel down and becoming rigid in the saddle. There, of course, comes a point that we might decide, well, I'm actually sitting way too far back, I'm moving too much, and I want to be more vertical. So this is what we talk about in terms of skeletal strength or alignment, but the body awareness gives us options. So you can move less with your lower back and more with your hip joints, or you can move with your hip joints and your back and allow the ribs to do this type of movement. So I often talk about the four corners, and that's basically the rectangle that describes the front of you, one in the back as well. And then we have an X across. So whether you choose to really have your front X open, or if you want to have a neutral front X, meaning it's the same size as the one in the back, these are your options. What we don't want, for the most part, I don't think anybody really wants a lot of closing of the front X. So we're left with those two options that some riders or some horses, or for whatever reason you need to, whether it's your trainer or your horse or your own decision, you might want to just be totally vertical. Therefore, you're working the least amount possible. So this is where it's a little close to what Eileen was saying about exercise or fitness, but you're not actually holding yourself up as much as it might suggest. What we're doing is neutralizing so that the skeleton is stacked up and it's actually the least amount of muscular work possible. And that's really what we're going after, is the least amount of work for the task at hand. Any other questions or comments? Robin, go ahead. So Robin is the one that I spoke about, who is a fitness trainer and works with riders. So would love to hear your input as to how this is different from exercise as you've been taking several of my courses, and I understand you're also introducing it to your clients.
True. And you know, we've had a conversation. I love what you do, and I love your communication, your ability to communicate. That's always the challenge, right? To how am I saying it, and are they understanding whatever we're teaching? But what I think the benefit is it's step one before you move forward. It's really, you provide them with the time to really think and feel and not be in such a rush, and maybe educate, like feel things that they never even felt, that we take for granted, or just because we know how the body works. When you flex your, you know, you contract in the front, your back lengthens, and things and people that it just provides an opportunity to really learn and explore their own bodies. And then the rewiring part, teaching, being real specific, as I have more mature clients, I'll say, that we just get numb almost to the pain, and that we're in, like back pain, hip pain, whatever. And if you take them to a place where the movement occurs without pain, you know, that's what you've taught us in Feldenkrais. You want to not be in pain and create the movement. And then it's a whole different process when they do start, maybe you know, asking a little bit more for it, if they do exercise or ride again, but maybe not in that tight contracted pain, that it becomes more soft and with ease. But if they need the contraction, they can contract but still without pain, hopefully. So and everybody's happy, and then the horse relaxes as well, and they're not bracing against you, bracing against them, and it just, you know, creates a flow. So, but it is all about, I go through the same thing. It's the educate, the how do I say it, and if it doesn't work one way, you've got to have 5 other ways to say it. More tools in your box, not just get your shoulders back, get your shoulders back. You know, it doesn't work that way. It's for everybody's, you know. So anyway, I love it, but I
Thank
do
you.
I do feel like it's the Pilates is very much the same. It's depending how it's taught, as we've talked about. It then teaches you correct movement and correct tone, and how to, when you do want to use a particular muscle or create a particular movement, how to do that with ease and flow, not crunching and pain. So, and
Wonderful.
breathing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Robin. I appreciate that. With your expertise, that means a lot. And yes, if I can add to that, whether it's Pilates or yoga or any other type of exercise that you wish to do, it's very separate. But I do believe that whether, even if it's weightlifting, working with your personal trainer, you will be able to bring in a certain quality, or an understanding or self anatomy that you wouldn't get if you had just skipped right through that. So whether it's just to avoid injury or to really help sculpt your body in the way you wish to do, as I'm assuming if you're exercising, some of that is the case, or this whole concept of pain. Often we're in pain and we can't exercise. So I was there for many years. I was not able to ride. And then, of course, I allowed myself to ride with a certain amount of pain, thinking it's fine. Or we have people in our society or in our group, our community, our riding community, that just think it's normal to, at a certain age, have back and hip pain and to just keep going with it. And maybe if you jumped a lot, your knees hurt. There is a way to avoid all of that. And I think for the most part, like anything else in horses, time is what's required, and patience. And if you take the time to do small, minute, easy movements and avoid the pain, your brain doesn't get the message of pain. So as soon as you start to do stretch, you've told the brain, I've reached my limit, I'm pushing myself out of my comfort zone. As soon as you start to experience pain, you will do the same thing. So we avoid contraction, we avoid stretch, however good it might feel for some of you. It's just not going to help us in our end goal in this type of work. So we don't do stretch, but yes, we end up flexible. because we're not just interested in stretching the muscles or what have you. We want to change the contraction through the brain. And by showing the brain what is possible, what is easier, what is more comfortable, we don't have to do anything that's out of our limit. In fact, we just do easy, 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 and then our range of easy gets developed and gets bigger. So this is really what we want, is that doesn't matter where you start, even if you feel that you have a lot of personal issues, what we're looking for is this, hopefully, the possibility of reaching further and further and further towards newer goals. So that's what I love about this work, is that it really is empowering, whether you have big goals in horse sport or whether it's just, you want, 5 or 10 more years of doing this well, because you have certain injuries or you believe you're at a certain age. So a lot of it happens to be belief systems. But this work really does either at least buy you some time, make you more comfortable, and for many people in many sports is that competitive edge. So I'm glad that all of you are here to discover more, and for the most part, you're already trying it. So thank you. And thank you again, Robin. Ina, could I ask if you have any questions? Ina from Belgium.
Yes. Hi, all of you. I try to work with the exercises. I don't like to call it exercises, but with the movements you taught us, and I'm trying to find for myself, for my own body, what works the best or what I need the most. And I was wondering if you have a certain type of build-up in your sequences that you do. I call it sequences because I don't like to call it exercise. So I'm trying to find a way, because when I did the first series with you, the first time after I've worked with you, it recalled me a lot, and I feel like I'm much more in tune again with my own body, that I feel that I can really say, oh, I open up my front exhale, okay, I sit on my neck, my head is wobbling, yeah, I'm going everywhere. So I really can feel all those things more easily than I did a while ago. So that is really nice to feel again. But then I try to do the work like 2-3 times a week, that I take time for myself. I place myself on the mat and I take whatever I feel that I want to do. But maybe I'm too much in my head with a certain goal that I want to achieve. So I'm trying to understand if there is some kind of build-up or some kind of exercises follow-up that you should, I don't know how to say it.
I think I understand. I think there's 2 questions, if that's okay, as I know you well. And if I can say that Ina spent some time with us in the US, and she's a trainer in Belgium. So, and we've had very good discussions. So I'm venturing not to try to really guess what you're thinking, but I think I know what you're saying. So in terms of a build-up, Dr. Feldenkrais, of course, had his model of what a human in general needs at first. So an adult, what do they need to be recalibrated or improved in general? And whether this had to do with the general population, just for let's have everyone improve their movement, or in different groups and situations of back problem cases, hip problem cases, knee problems. So it really depends on where you're coming from, where you would start. But what's very unique about our system is that if a hip is hurting, we'll basically work with everything but the hips. So this is different from a physiotherapy approach, for example, or even an exercise approach where you're trying to strengthen things. So we try to go around the whole body and get patterns moving. So you might ask, well, what could you do other than the hips? We might go, you talked about the head wobbling. So if our pole, our human pole, the horse equivalent, is supple and loose, that changes the whole tone of the upper half. Inversely, you have the same thing at the ankle area for the lower half. So we like to reduce tone. Why? Because you want to build on top of that. So I think this is also what you're talking about. What's the sequencing? We try to take away all the tension that sort of holds us together carefully, because people spend a whole lifetime sort of patching themselves up to be where they are. We don't want to change them right away because now someone's left unable to support themselves in space. So through a gentle, considerate way, depending on the person, it is a long process. And of course, the general idea is that the lessons speak to different functions in the human, whether it has to do with flexion or extension or side bend or rotation, and those combinations. And then of course, in different planes in gravity, laying down, on the side, sitting. And then of course, we also have the evolution of human movement, whether it's as toddlers, crawling, creeping, all of those things, but also our ancestors on all four, movement like that. And I just have to mute something 1 moment, please. Okay, then it's okay now. Thank you. So basically what happens is that when we have all of those possibilities, our road will not be very clear. It won't be a straight. So it's different, of course, if I'm working with you directly, we'll talk and come up a bit of a plan of where we're going, and you would be more included in that plan. But in my opinion, the work works so well, even without that, by these group classes, the awareness through movement classes, that the functional integration, which is the hands-on piece of it, it's excellent. But if you just keep going with the ATM, the awareness through movement lessons, magic will happen. And then when it comes to that idea of maybe trying too much, I would say that myself included, when I lay down to do a lesson because I loved it because of a certain outcome that I felt wonderful, and I rode this horse after and I felt that and it was wonderful, I think we just have to give up trying to find that same feeling again. It will never be the same. Of course, an educated person as yourself who knows about biomechanics will know that certain lessons will yield on average certain types of movement. But in terms of personal feeling and improvement, we want to keep an attitude of a beginner and someone who doesn't know what's coming next. And you do it so slowly, so gently, and you might, oh, wow, that's what happened. And I, for one, feel it's wonderful as I get older. It's my one outlet to feel childish, that I can just have fun and, not have to feel serious about it. Of course, it's my job, it's my passion, but it's really helped me be more light about the subject, because otherwise biomechanics, it can get very dry. And it's really not that type of thing anyways, this dry, brittle, bone on bone type of thing. So some of you have heard me talk about tensegrity and how everything is moving together in liquid. It is. And we're changing and we're moving, and we all accept that our horses are changing and they're alive and they're moving and developing, hopefully in the right way. But I would say just keep the focus on the direction we want to go, not worrying about the whoops, my horse or myself didn't develop in the right way. We know what quality movement is. We know when our horses feel good. We know when our horses tell us they're happy the way we're riding them, or the saddle is fitting, or what have you. So we're really developing those senses that we already have. So lucky for us as riders, this is very different to learn this work as opposed to a non-rider. So I've worked with non-riders, but I essentially don't work with non-riders. So if somebody comes to me with a pain or a problem or a different sport, I'm very interested in that type of stuff. So I will work with them. But I think it's a real gift to work with riders, because all of you have spent time developing your feeling, not only of your own body, what's under you, behind you, and the combination of these two things together. So it's really wonderful. So I hope that helps, Ina, just to, yeah.
Yeah, it's again a reminder of not putting a goal out there, but stay open and explore what the opportunities are of your movement, of your own body. And it sort of always comes down to that, just leave behind your expectations and just feel. And yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Ina. And if I can add one other thing is that sometimes for some people, you will feel a little lost on that way by letting go of what it is that you already know. And I think it was in the case of half halts, there was an article years ago that I read, and this very famous trainer was talking about, well, she's thrown them out because if you keep doing whatever you do for however many years, so this was Kira Kirkland, how can it be any better? And I think that's really the same, is that yes, we want to hang on to what's good, or not really hang on to it, because we'll never hang on to it that way. Start to feel that you can come at, whether it's something simple like a super circle for an 8, you can do it 5 different ways, because the horse will be different day to day in the show and the weather and how you slept that night. So I think the other thing that I've learned through this work is a lack of attachment to how I need it to be. Of course, I'm very happy to have options. I have preferences, but I also have to be comfortable and able to act spontaneously in a situation where that pattern doesn't work. So there's other options, there's other ways to communicate with my horses or with a student. And I think that it's really okay to feel a little bit lost on the way sometimes, because we take away the tone, we take away all the working hard or doing better. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a goal in your riding, but this work within the riding is not the sort of, for me, it's a very central piece. I think for most people, it fits very comfortably somewhere on the side as one of the things they do to help them. But when it becomes a central piece, you have to be careful that you don't start to think, well, everything should just be however it is. Because then maybe, yes, we have goals. It's a sport. So I think that in itself is going to be a balancing act for each individual. So thank you very much, Ina. And on that, I think Jan has a question. You brought it up in the students group, and I saw you smiling in this last conversation. Would you mind sharing a bit of your dilemma, if you will, and maybe you can update us on what your thoughts are?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can feel a real connection with both the previous sort of questions. I mean, to be honest, one of my main thoughts is that, you know, I've become much more confident and much more aware of my own self-belief, which I've realised since posting my question about that I've been sort of almost criticised for my lack of posture recently, in a very traditional sense, is that it's quite surprised me, because I felt so confident and so, which I don't normally feel, that, you know, and I felt quite free and quite easy to express myself on the horses, different horses, that when I rode quite a high level horse the other day, and it didn't go that well, but actually I had a lot of fun, and the horse felt quite free, and I felt quite confident. But then when I watched the video playback, if it doesn't sound too arrogant, I was quite surprised at how the lack of posture that I had in the traditional sense. And the video shows the instructor actually manipulating my body back into a very firm position. And I could see where they were talking about, because the strength in my back seems to have gone in a different way, but I'm much more fluid and much more free, and that it kind of doesn't really matter to me, but it matters to him. I'm not quite sure what my question is from this, but I think the increase in self-belief and confidence far outweighs what I look like. that makes any sense at all to everybody.
I love it, you know, because of course they have to help you with the tools that they have and what, you know, they teach you. So I don't really actually want to comment on the teacher. I'm sure they're doing a great job, but knowing you and listening to your requests, or, you know, what you just said just now, not even anything else about that. If you're happy with the comfort and the suppleness and the movement, and if you're saying you previously weren't a confident rider and now you are, I wouldn't change anything, because this is all developmental. To be confident, to feel supple, and to be on a moving horse that can be terrifying for just about anybody who's had any type of trauma or injury or learned as an adult. The fact of the matter is we're wired to protect our heads. And if we think at all that we're in the risk of falling and injuring ourselves, our system is looking after us. So it's not a shocker that we go into this mode where we worry, whether it's the smallest of details, the eyes stare a little bit, or we hold our breath, or we start sweating, or something happening, tightening the abdominal walls, any type of reaction. And we know that our ancestors shared this with us. And it's not the same. We're not being hunted. We're having a wonderful time on a horse, but our system doesn't really understand the difference between the two stressors. So I think that the more we can get comfortable with movement on a horse, it'll never be like we were born with 4 legs, or that, you know, we're nomadic Mongolian horse people. It'll never be like that. But all of these things that we can do to take away those patterns of tension and allow us to become comfortable with our own bodies and movement. And, you know, you can turn that into dance, expression, martial arts, another sport, or sitting bareback on a horse and really being able to follow. And this is why it's so important that when we educate young riders, children, what we want to do is educate them with the various saddles, the jumping saddle, the dressage saddle, and before this, ideally with a vaulting girth. You know, this is the ideal way, and lunge lessons and all of those things, so that they early on have this experience of following and really being with a horse and feeling comfortable. And they're smaller, they're more compact, and that'll help them not have these fears. This doesn't mean that an adult can't learn those skills. There are riders that you maybe know. Charlotte Yorst is one that learned to ride as an adult. So I think if your mind is there and you want to do it, it doesn't matter what age you've learned to ride, you can do it. But I think for me, the first thing is the movement, the comfort, the suppleness, the coordination of movement as well. But the coordination of movement can't be there if there's an underlying fear factor. And I think if you're breathing well and you're comfortable and you're moving around too much, it's okay. I spent years like that deliberately. And I even told myself, you know what, I used to have higher marks on my seat mark, but I don't want it because I'm not breathing well. I'm get nervous at competitions, and, you know, everyone has their ups and their downs. So it doesn't matter really, I think, if you're happy. So if you're saying that you're feeling more confident and more comfortable, I think it'll be easy for you later to tweak that into whatever posture they'd like you to be in. But they also haven't spent the time that you have to realize what it means to your nervous system to have certain contractions. So if for nothing else, I myself don't allow others to force me to do something that I know better that doesn't work for me. So yeah.
I found actually that when I was having the constructive criticism, that I kind of took it differently. You know, I was sort of you know, I love the lessons that we've had together, but equally the learning independently has really opened up my horizons. It really opened it up, because I think the audio is I think having the Zoom classes has trained my audio aspect, and I listen more attentively, and I never look at the videos. I'm tempted sometimes, but I never look. And I think that in itself has just really built that self-confidence that, you know, whatever I'm doing on the horse, I believe is the right thing. And that in itself is bringing about a confidence in my movements, I think. And
Wonderful.
I think Barbara put a comment on so that she'd gone through a floppy period. And I think that's a perfect expression, was floppy. That's not something that one thinks one is aspiring to in dressage.
No, and I've told this story before, but I'll tell as I think it's suitable, and especially when we have, you know, a large group of some people who are new at this, and also to relate the question about, you know, what Ina was saying, what's the next step and how can we, you can't really manipulate it that well. I did a mistake. I was at a show and I thought to myself, well, I really want to ride with a strong back, because that's what Dr. Feldenkrais is teaching us, is really being strong with the back and having your back and the abdominals free. So I had, oh, wonderful. The hotel is 5 minutes away. I'm going to go do a lesson and I'm going to go ride and this will be perfect. I also knew better. This was years ago, but I also knew better by now not to mess around with these things and do a lesson in a situation like that and change a lot of things. And the funny thing was, I thought I felt great. I also thought I looked great. My sister was there and was telling me, what are you doing? And I said, what do you mean? And, you know, stop sticking your stomach out like that. Looks like your button's going to burst open, you know, so that's fine. And I thought, well, I want to have a free abdomen, so this is fine. I didn't realize that the whole time I was riding, I was doing some kind of wiggling wave movement. So it turned out that doing an extensors lesson, all to do, but I did it like exercise. So this, and with too much intention. So what Ina was talking about, basically, I did a combo of a Feldenkrais / plank, and I'm really gonna get, and then I'm gonna inverse myself and get my back to work, and I'm gonna sit so perfectly. It was terrible in the video, but it felt great. But anyhow, that was the last time that I ever tried to do that. But yes, it can happen to anybody. And whether it's temporary because you just did a certain amount of lessons, or there was too much intention on doing those lessons and then expecting a certain outcome. So the lessons really are to be done to inform the whole nervous system. So I think that, yes, I could talk to you about, well, you want to have more tone, or do you want skeletal strength? And I could recommend certain lessons, but just based on what you're saying is that you're feeling confident and you're enjoying it. I love it. Wouldn't change a thing. So thank you for that. Okay, so we have a couple more people with their cameras on. So Barry, if I could ask you if you had any questions or comments, and if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Barry Belknap. I ride right now dressage, but I started out riding bareback and pole bending and barrel racing. So it's been, anyway, but right now my horse is in Canada and I'm stuck here, so I haven't ridden in a year. So I'm here to try to just stay in contact and listen and learn. But I worked with Dave. He helped me a lot when I was riding. It's really good. I'm still integrating those lessons even into my sitting all day, trying to think of Feldenkrais. So I don't have a specific question, but I'm so grateful to the rest of you for your being so generous with your experiences and what you're learning. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, Barry, if you don't mind, because I know you work with a very good personal trainer for exercising weekly, I believe a couple of privates you do a week, and you are a trained and working medical doctor. Would you be willing to give your opinion on the differences of exercise versus Feldenkrais? So when this question about exercise and Feldenkrais came up, I saw you and thought of you, because I know you're very keen on fitness and exercising. But I also believe you have a good understanding of what the differences are here.
Right. Well, I think kind of what's interesting is the person whom I work with is someone whose philosophy is that really it's all about connecting the body to itself so it communicates. It's all about opening channels of communication. So Feldenkrais, it seems, works well with that. He, again, doesn't do stretching. It's like if something hurts, it's overworking because something else isn't working. And so he goes back to the centers of proprioception, the feet and the jaw and the eyes. So you're always doing mostly the feet, or or it can be like the sacrum. So I'm, you know, he does a lot of work with me around, and it's all isometric. So isometric. So you hold a position, and so. But the thing that's a bit different is I don't, you know, what you helped me with, Dave, is we're moving more. Like with him, I'm usually connecting and not moving much just to increase the communication. But what I find is when I stand on a weight, or when I do some exercises with the ankle using something that's helping me feel the bones in my feet. So I'm aware of how the bones connect. Usually the muscles just talk. I mean, they move by themselves. So it's not traditional exercise, but it's true. One can get, I think I certainly grabbed onto what you said today, that as soon as, or, you know, I guess you said, as soon as I'm trying to do something, I lose it. As soon as I try to recreate it, I can't ever find it. And it's really hard to have like a belief that a belief in my body that it can just do it and it will find a way if I'm more just tuned in. I mean, Dave, the one time where you worked with me right before I got on the horse, it was so amazing how just tuning in to myself with a simple exercise, it was 20 minutes or something like that. I just was primed to be tuned in on the horse in a way that I couldn't have made up. I couldn't have told myself what to do. So,
Thank you for that.
yeah.
Wonderful, yeah. And I wish more people taught exercise the way your trainer does, because that's absolutely is to do with all of the things you were mentioning. And one thing that I will add is what you just said, is that I helped you for 20 minutes. Yes, we worked together, but it was your nervous system. So my job was to help work with your nervous system to learn those small movements. And of course, knowing that you had done these lessons, so I could work with you. I remember it was a very short lesson, and you went and rode, and you have a wonderful Grand Prix horse, and it was perfect, wonderful. But I think the input that you can get, 15, 20 minutes. I was there that day with her. But I know for a fact that with the right lessons, 10, 15 minutes just before, it can have a wonderful outcome. Could really ruin your ride if you do it too long. But just a little bit, if you're doing these lessons on a completely different day, and then you just access it a little bit, that can work. So thank you very much for bringing that up, Barry, because that's something I wanted to talk about today. One of the questions I got was, well, can I start to do these lessons on horseback? Yes, but what I'm also saying is be cautious with how much of it you do prior to getting on. So if I know, you know, you're riding and you have a safe horse, someone can hold your horse, why not practice the pelvic clock, put your arms behind you like this. And this is something I use with almost every student at some point. So what I have them do on a safe horse is they put their arms behind them comfortably on the horse, that has to be comfortable for the horse and for the rider. Be aware what's getting tight when I do this. Yes, somebody's holding the horse, but the horse didn't like that. They just piaffed, something happened. So can I breathe? Can I let go? Can I really allow my center of gravity downwards, or do I get fetal and hold my breath, and am I ready for a disaster? So the thighs can let go, the abdominals can let go, you can be free, the jaw, the tongue. When Barry was talking about all, the feet, all these small things, they actually mean a lot to our nervous system. And you'll find out more as you do the classes. So if you lean back onto your arms like this with bent elbows, and then you do your pelvic clock, the 12 and the 6 like this, you can also add it with the looking back and the looking down, or variations where you only look back and you do the same thing, so that you have the possibility to have this movement, but also a little bit more in this direction. So for the most part, most people struggle with being vertical. It's not that they lean too far back. They're usually leaning too far forward and closing. So going in the opposite direction, opening. I'm not saying that you're going to stay there forever, unless that's what you want to do and that's what your trainer wants and your horse wants. But opening up, allowing for hip movement, free belly breathing, and just being there and being able to move in that place and then have options, whether you want to come a bit more vertical, whether you want to stay a bit more back, and learning to use your back, because that's one of the things that Dr. Feldenkrais used to talk about, is that in a society riddled with back problems, people are given abdominal exercises and they still have back problems. So yes, I think that doing abdominal exercises can take away the work, but usually what the problem is actually the coordination is wrong. So it's not just a weak back, but the coordination between the flexors and the extensors. So just like your bicep and your tricep, if you have a co-contraction, you'll end up causing yourself a lot of discomfort. And then also based on that, are we relaxed? Are we confident? Are we comfortable? Are we being hunted? Are we safe? All of those things happen to have an effect. So you're sitting on your horse, and if you get very flighty, your horse will feel it. So just doing that 12 and 6 like that with your arms behind you, and now when you're vertical and you have your contact, you can just think second set of arms. By that I mean you just think a little bit about what that was like, and that will help you basically keep your front X open. It'll also help you ride with your lower back, the Kreuz riding, as it's called, to ride with your lower back in German. Some other texts talk about riding with the small of your back, using your back. That's a very misunderstood concept. And if for nothing else, you don't want to be pulled out of the saddle by your horse. And you want to have a way to hold yourself there other than pulling. So the pulling back is never going to help. And yes, you could use, quote, your core, but what really are we talking about? The core, what muscles? I wouldn't go in this direction, because anything that looks like a sit-up is putting you still, displacing you out of the saddle. So being able to use your back has to do with letting go of the abdominals. So yeah, that's the first one I would say. From there, you do your 12 and your 6. You can do some other things like that. And you can do, imagine the head rolling while you're walking. And you can think, okay, I'm walking. I do a round movement that has to do with like a pendulum. It's not just a straight back and forth. Also in the trot, the pelvic clock is always something that I come back to. The 12 and the 6 is the main movement, but what about the 3 and the 9? So we're not going to be doing any type of side bend. So in the class, we have lessons where we have, you know, long side, short side, and we have the diagonal connections. So you'll be learning those types of movements if you haven't already. So within your box, so your rectangle can also come up to here, you'll have your diagonal movement. So the pressure comes through you within this box. So it's something like a short side, long side lesson, and it keeps happening within the movement. Other things that we know from the class that we're doing, the rotation, whether we want everything to turn when we're riding, or whether you want the option that the shoulders go one way, the pelvis goes the other way, as described in the old textbooks for canter. Or, you know, the 3 basic pieces. We have side-lying lessons where you move the head, you move the shoulders, depending on the lesson, you move the pelvis. So having that operational control and options will really go a long way into your shoulder ends, your half pass, your travers, your renvers, and also problem solving. Why is the horse crooked, or why do I get crooked? And then of course, canter work. We do a lot with the flexors and the extensors. A lot of people have the problem that they sit too far forward on their inside seat bone. And what does that have to do with? That they're not round enough in their lower back on the inside. Some people, they overdo this sort of arching and they back up their outside leg too much, and then their outside seat bone is off. So you need to have both seat bones in the saddle and the ability to have this scooping movement and lowering and following the canter that way. And for that, it's still the same pelvic clock lesson that will help you have that flexibility. So thinking too much in terms of vertical and posture, it really takes away from this following ability. And I think if you start to experience improvements within your communication with your horses, the rest of it comes pretty naturally. So thank you, Barry, for answering that. Robin, you had a comment?
I did, because I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I teach and do as far as that. Again, it's the words, but teaching how to use your back. And there is this misunderstanding of what you're saying, using your abdominals. I think of core, and what is the core? Think of transversus and multifidi. Being able to, yes, sometimes I would like to use them to flex my spine, but also being able to use them, engage them to whatever degree you need to support the spine extended. So you're supporting your back in this neutral spine lengthened, rather than I'm either flexed or I'm extended. Teaching that it's those deeper muscles that you want that suppleness and that yumminess to be able to follow, and you're not stuck, but you're not floppy either. So it's the same concept, just different words.
Wonderful. Thank you again. So I have two other people here today with their cameras on so far. So there's Laurel and Diana. Laurel, did you have a question or comment? Could you unmute yourself, please?
I don't really have a question, but this has been interesting because as I go through the course and I'm loosening my body, I am feeling floppy, and I guess that's okay to feel floppy for a while you you stabilize yourself in a way that's comfortable for the horse. And I mean, my horse is going great. It's me that feels like I'm moving more than I should, but maybe I'm not moving more than I should. Maybe I am just, I think I'm a little unbalanced or not very smooth in the way I'm following, but the horse seems, I mean, my horse is really going great. I mean, she's at third level, and she's and everything is just a whole lot, she's a whole lot happier.
Wonderful.
So I guess floppiness is okay until you can really more stabilize yourself. Is that making sense?
It is, but I have the same answer I had for Jan. If you're telling me that your horse is that happy, I don't know if she was unhappy before, I'm not reading into this, but you're telling me my horse is happy, my horse likes this, I love it.
My horse is feeling more like a rubber band. I mean,
wonderful.
She's very, very flexible anyway. She's just a very, she's gifted that way, but I think I'm allowing the flexibility where maybe I was blocking it more before. Mm-hmm. Is all I can think of.
And I hope it's okay for me to say, but because your trainer is also taking these lessons and knows a lot about the subject, I believe she's very happy with your writing. So whether it's to do, with, we look in the mirror, of course, we'd always like things a little bit better, and we see a video. But I think, especially if the horse is happy and your trainer is happy, we're on to something good. And yes, there will be a period of everybody just being a little bit too loose. And I talk about that within the course. And Jan was talking about this week. And I was also thinking, all right now we're going to have a lot of people that are feeling too floppy and loose and are going to be wondering, is this any good, or do I keep going? And I don't think that that's, really the case. But of course, I worry that people worry, so this is maybe something for me to work on, is that, it's not necessarily that you're worrying that you're no longer stable, but if I can add just to the whole idea that, yes, everything is moving, we're going to be a little unstable for a while. That's how it is, and we'll find it back. And that's just my personal experience with that. So thank you, Laurel, for sharing your personal experience.
Thank you.
Diana.
Good evening, where you are. Morning for me. This is not a question so much as a thank you. and a sharing of experience. I'm currently in between horses, so I don't have a horse to get on to ride, and I'm hoping to go back and ride at a higher level than my previous horse was at. So I've been in the gym working on conditioning myself, because it's been about a year since my horse, with the pandemic and everything, can't go looking for a horse. So my trainer notices when I'm in the gym that I am quite contracted on my right side. And having done your work and that no pain, I did one of your group courses with you, and you said to me, if it cramps, just imagine it. So I've been doing that because it was cramping quite badly. So I haven't really done much work on the right side, because somewhere else in one of your courses you mentioned that if there's a problem on that side, leave it alone, work on the other side. So I've been working on the left. And he's noticed that when I do my work, he can tell when I've done one of your sessions, because I come in and he will present me with something that he thinks should be challenging for me, not hurting me, but challenging for me. And I just cruise through it. And the right side has actually lengthened and strengthened, where it was so tight, it was compressed. So the left side's catching up. So I'm evening out without actually doing any work on the right side. So I wanted to say thank you very much, because if I got back on a horse now and I was so compressed to the right, I'd be making all sorts of problems for myself, especially with those lateral movements and things. And I'm very aware of that. And you were saying the privilege of working with an equestrian. He's just blown away by the amount of self-awareness I have about what my body does and how it works. So he gives me these exercises and I immediately think, what's the skeleton doing? I do a scan, I figure out what my skeleton's doing, I leave the muscles alone, and he goes, I can't make it difficult for you. You have this cheat. What are you doing? You have this cheat. So he's not over-facing me, because I did have a lot of neurological problems at one point. I was a quadriplegic, so I do have a lot of neurological disconnect in certain movements. And through the work that I've been doing with your course and trying to do it every day, but not getting there every day, but at least doing a scan every day, I've found that my coordination is coming back to what it was prior to that incident. So I'm really thankful. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. And if I can say this, I can feel the enthusiasm all the way here. So thank you so much for sharing that. No, really, because of course I'm so enthusiastic about this work, but to hear you say, you know, your story and to tell us about what you've been experiencing and how it's helped you, I'm so grateful to have that opportunity, really, to be working with you and anybody else who's finding this helpful, because it really can change a lot of things. And I totally agree. Not, you know, if you're not riding, that's one thing. But even if you are riding, and if you know you're crooked, I won't get on my horses if I feel crooked that day. Because I think you'll get to the point that you'll know that, well, I would really like to ride now, but I feel crooked at the moment. So I need to do some lessons and put off the riding till later, or maybe today's a good day for hand walking or lunging or something else, because I always say that stiffness and crookedness is contagious, whether it comes from the rider, the saddle, or from the horse. We're the human in the situation, so we have to make sure the tack is fitting, and we have to make sure that we're supple and equal. I wouldn't worry to the point that you think, well, I don't want to ride because I'm damaging my horse. But if you know you can be better with some very simple things, like you said, just doing a scan, a very simple scan. I tell everybody, if you don't have time and you can spend a few minutes, lay down, do a scan, do the head rolling, and that's it. And if you feel like doing more, which usually if you feel like, it's because it's curious, it's not a task, you don't have to. So I think just getting on the ground, connecting with that way, feeling where the shoulder blades are, feeling where the pelvis is, do some rolling of the legs, and, you know, just how our scan can change. I'm still amazed every time I do these scans and I start crooked and I end up totally symmetrical. It's shocking after all these years that it's that easy. Of course, if I try too hard and try to, you know, make that happen, it's not going to happen. So this is really what we were talking about earlier, but just having fun with it, doing a scan, rolling around, doing, you know, people might think, what's the point of this? But we like it and it helps us and our horses like it. So that's what counts. So thank you so much, Diana. I think at this point, I'll ask if there's any other questions, somebody that I've not heard from, any difficulties within the course, but I hope our main subject ended up being about how do we address exercise / tone and looseness, or goal, or you know, being goal oriented within this work. I think it made a fascinating subject. So thank you, all of you who shared your questions and your comments. And also thank you to everyone who's joined us today. But I would love to ask at this point if there's any other short questions that I can answer. And please ask each other questions. Share your personal experiences on the student group. I think it's really wonderful to have everyone communicate about their progress, their horses, their questions, their difficulties. And a lot of you come from various backgrounds of different expertise, but just being a fellow rider also on the same journey. I think it's wonderful that you can help support each other with your opinions and your take on the different situations. So thank you for coming. And if there's any questions that you want to send or ask now, you can. And I'm just looking to see, did everyone write where they were from before they leave? A beautiful message from Barry, had to leave. So yeah, we had, you know, I counted 30 people before, and from all over the world actually. And I'm really pleased everyone came and is interested in this work. So thank you, and we'll look forward to the next time then. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.